The more available you are, the less you're valued. It's a painful truth. When you're always there ready to respond, ready to help, ready to please, people stop seeing you. They only see what they can take from you. And without realizing it, you become a resource, not a person. But the moment you stop being available, the game changes. And for the first time, you become again. There's a shift that happens when you stop offering yourself so freely. You don't announce it, you don't explain. You simply withdraw emotionally, mentally, sometimes even physically. And suddenly, everything around you starts to stir. People notice. The same ones who ignored your presence begin to feel your absence like a missing piece in a puzzle they thought they had mastered. They start reaching out not because they care, but because your silence makes them uncomfortable. Because for the first time you've stopped dancing to the rhythm they set. You see, we're trained from an early age to be available, to show up, stay nice, respond quickly, be useful, be pleasant. We're told this is what love looks like, what kindness is, what good people do. But no one tells you what it costs. Because every time you say yes, when your gut says no, every time you answer that message, even when your soul is tired, every time you rush to help just to keep someone from being upset, you abandon yourself. And that abandonment doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, quiet, invisible, like pouring your energy into 1,000 tiny cups until one day you look around and realize you're empty. But here's the paradox. The moment you stop being endlessly available, not rude, not cold, just selective, you stop being invisible. You become a mystery, and mysteries command attention. That's the invisible power of withdrawal. It's not about hurting anyone. It's about finally listening to yourself. And when you do, the people who only valued your accessibility start to fall away. But deeper than that, you start to see clearly who was truly there for you and who was only there for what you could give. This is where your transformation begins. Because when you withdraw, you stop performing. And in that pause, you become something rare, something real. But of course, there's a reason this isn't easy. Because we've been trained to believe that being always available is what makes us lovable. And that brings us to the next truth, one that hurts but frees you the moment you accept it. Let's talk about the beautiful cage of emotional availability and how it keeps you from ever really being seen. We were taught that love means being there all the time. To pick up the phone, to answer the message, to say yes, even when it hurts, even when it costs you your peace. We were raised on the idea that good people don't say no, that silence is rude, that withdrawal is abandonment. So we learned to smile when we were tired, to show up when we were broken, to say, it's okay, even when everything inside us whispered, it's not. But what if I told you this wasn't kindness? What if I told you it was self-betrayal in disguise? See, emotional availability, when it's constant, when it's expected, when it becomes your identity, starts to feel like love, like connection, like meaning. But underneath, it's a cage. A beautiful one. Yes, but still a cage. Because when you're always available, you're not seen for who you are. You're seen for what you provide. Comfort, validation, attention, support. People stop asking how you feel. They assume you're fine. You're always fine, aren't you? But here's the truth. Being emotionally available to everyone leaves nothing for you. You're so focused on soothing their storms, you forget you're drowning too. You're so practiced at playing the strong one, the understanding one, the peacemaker, that you forget how to let someone hold space for you. And worst of all, you start believing that your worth is tied to being needed. That if you stop showing up for everyone else, they'll forget you, leave you, replace you. So you keep giving, even when you're depleted, even when you're breaking. Carl Jung called this the personate mask we wear to be accepted. It's not fake, it's just incomplete. It's the version of you that pleases, performs, adapts. The one that says yes so often, you forget what no feels like. But living behind a mask has a cost. Because the longer you wear it, the harder it becomes to remove. And one day, you wake up and realize they love the version of you that isn't even real. You smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes. You show up, but inside you feel invisible. You're surrounded by people, but feel completely alone because no one can truly connect with you when you're only giving them a version of yourself that exists for them. It's time to break the pattern, to step back, to breathe, to question the idea that being constantly available makes you lovable, because it doesn't. It just makes you easy to use. And the moment you begin to withdraw, even gently, you'll see it. The shift. Some people will panic. Others will get angry. A few will fall away completely. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stopped playing the role. And this is the moment you realize you were never really chosen. You were just convenient. Painful? Yes. But also liberating. Because from here, you stop chasing approval and you start reclaiming something more important. Your peace. But when you begin to pull back, to choose yourself over the crowd, something else happens. A strange discomfort arises not in you, but in them. And the question is, why? Let's explore that next. Let's talk about why they panic when you disappear. There's a strange moment that happens when you begin to withdraw. You don't say much. You stop over-explaining. You stop rushing to reply. You start honoring your silence. And suddenly, people around you start to shift. Some become distant. Others become demanding. A few will even accuse you of changing, of being cold, of not being like you used to be. But the truth is, you're not becoming someone else. You're just no longer performing. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because the version of you they grew attached to, the overly available, endlessly understanding, emotionally accommodating version, was never meant to last. It was never meant to be your identity. It was a survival strategy. And now, you're outgrowing it. So why do they panic? Because when you become unavailable, it's not just you who changes. You force them to look at themselves. And not everyone is ready for that. You see, your availability wasn't just convenient, was protective. It protected others from their own discomfort. They could rely on you to absorb it, to hold it, to fix it. But now, your silence leaves them alone, with their own noise. In that silence, it's louder than any argument, because while you were always available, they never had to question their behavior. They never had to face their patterns. They never had to take responsibility for the way they used your presence to escape their own emptiness. But when you disappear emotionally, energetically, or physically, the mirror breaks. And suddenly, they're left staring at a reflection they never wanted to see. That's when the manipulation begins. The guilt trips. The "you've changed" accusations. The emotional drama. But none of it is really about you. It's about the power you took back when you stopped being accessible. It's about the roles they can no longer assign to you. They don't miss you. They miss the control they had over your attention. They miss how predictable you were. They miss how you made them feel. And when that control is gone, it feels like chaos. But here's the secret. No one tells you your withdrawal isn't the problem. It's the spotlight. It shines on everything they've avoided. And sometimes, the people who once called you selfless will now call you selfish, not because you hurt them, but because you stopped letting them use your peace to soothe their storms. You will be misunderstood. You will be judged. But you will also be free. And freedom is never given. It's taken quietly, without apology. But this isn't just about boundaries. It's about something deeper, because at the heart of all this is a force more valuable than time, more sacred than love. It's your energy. And once you understand how it works, you'll never waste it again. Let's talk about that now. Let's talk about the invisible currency of your life. Your psychic energy. Your energy is your most valuable currency. Not your time, not your words, not even your love. It's your energy, your attention, your emotional presence, your inner fire. And every time you give it away without awareness, you go a little more bankrupt inside. Carl Jung didn't see the psyche as a passive mind reacting to the world. He saw it as a living system, an ecosystem of energy. Every thought you entertain, every emotion you feed, every response you give costs you something. So ask yourself, how much energy have you spent defending yourself to someone who wasn't even listening? How much have you wasted trying to explain your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you? How often do you feel drained after conversations that didn't nourish your soul? That's not weakness. That's misdirection. You're not exhausted because you're fragile. You're exhausted because you've been investing your energy where it's not respected. And the truth is, the world has no intention of protecting your energy for you. It will pull, prod, provoke just to see if you'll give it away. Because the moment you react impulsively, you've lost. You hand over your center. Someone sends a passive-aggressive message, you answer. Someone criticizes you unfairly, you defend. Someone demands your attention, you drop everything and show up. Each time, a piece of your power leaves with it. But what if you didn't respond? What if, just once, you allowed the moment to pass without engaging, without justifying, without trying to fix or prove? You'd feel uncomfortable. Yes, you might even feel guilty. But beneath that discomfort is something rare, discipline, the ability to choose where your energy goes, instead of letting the world decide. And that is where your transformation begins. Because Jung believed the healthy psyche is one that contains energy, not in repression, but in self-governance. You don't give your fire to every wind that passes. You tend to it like something sacred. When you conserve your energy, you create presence. You enter a room and people feel you without you saying a word. You start to command respect not because you demand it, but because you radiate it. That's what happens when you stop bleeding energy into every conflict, every conversation, every moment of validation seeking. You stop being reactive and start being magnetic. But this doesn't mean you shut down or become cold. It means you become selective. You know when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. And that makes some people uncomfortable, because they can no longer pull you in. They can't use your emotions like a vending machine anymore. And when that happens, the energy vampires the manipulators, the emotional opportunists, they start to panic. Because your silence, it cuts them off from their supply. And that's exactly what we need to talk about next. Because there are people in your life who don't want you, they want your energy. And the moment you stop feeding them, their mask begins to fall. Let's go there. Let's talk about how manipulators feed on your energy and how silence disarms them. There are people in your life who don't want you. They want access to your time, to your emotional labor, to your energy. Not to build with you, but to feed off you. And the thing is, they usually don't come with warning signs. They don't yell. They don't demand. They just know which buttons to press. And they press them quietly. Jung called this projection. It's when someone unconsciously places their own shadows, the things they refuse to see in themselves, onto someone else, onto you. And the more emotionally available you are, the more blank space they have to write their story over your face. You become the therapist, the savior, the emotional sponge, the one they run to when their world collapses, but forget the moment they feel fine again. They don't see you. They see a role you've unknowingly agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because deep down, there's a fear of being rejected, of being seen as cold, of being unloved. So you keep performing, you keep giving, you keep being emotionally open, thinking this is what connection looks like. But here's the secret. The most powerful manipulation isn't force. It's guilt. The silent kind. The kind that whispers. If you say no, you're selfish. If you don't show up, you're cold. If you don't answer, they'll leave. So you answer. You show up. You give in. Even when it empties you. But manipulators don't need to break you. They just need you to keep reacting. That's the leash. That's how they stay in control, by making sure your energy is always directed toward them. And when you finally stop, when you stop answering the bait, when you don't explain yourself, when you say no without apology, when you give them silence instead of reaction, they fall apart. Not because you hurt them, but because they can no longer use you to avoid themselves. And that is terrifying, because now the mask you wore for them is gone. The one that made them feel safe, in control, above the truth. Now they're left with their own chaos. And your absence becomes a mirror they can't look away from. This is why silence is such a powerful weapon. It doesn't attack. It reveals. It forces the other to face the reality they were trying to drown with your availability. And here's the twist. Most people aren't afraid of your boundaries. They're afraid of what your boundaries say about them. Because now they have to wonder, why did they need you so desperately? Why couldn't they stand your distance? Why does your no feel like a threat? The answer lives in them. But the power now lives in you. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop being controlled. And that's when the dynamic collapses. But this silence, it's not just quiet, it's sacred. And in the next part, we'll go deeper into that, into how silence isn't emptiness, but amplified presence. Because the strongest people aren't those who talk the loudest. They're the ones who've learned the language of restraint. Let's talk now about why silence isn't weakness, but mastery. Silence has a reputation. People think it means you have nothing to say, that you're afraid, that you've given up. But real silence, the kind that comes from awareness, not fear, is a language only the strong know how to speak. Because silence is not passive. It's not emptiness. It's not weakness. It's restraint. It's clarity. It's mastery over your own energy. In a world that demands immediate reactions, instant opinions, constant engagement, silence is rebellion. Not the kind that screams in protest, the kind that stares back, unmoved. Jung saw silence as fertile ground, a space where the self could finally speak without interference. When you stop responding to every noise outside of you, you start hearing the truth inside. And that's where everything shifts. You begin to observe more than you speak. You start seeing patterns, emotional cycles, manipulation loops, self-sabotage scripts. All of it becomes clear when you stop reacting, because reaction keeps you in the game. But silence, it takes you off the board. It breaks the rules. Suddenly, the person who thrived on your defensiveness has nothing to push against. The one who relied on your constant empathy has no one to drain. The world that kept pulling at your attention through guilt, pressure, chaos, starts to lose its grip. And here's what's wild. You don't even have to explain your silence. It explains itself. The people who get upset by it, they were never listening to your words. They were relying on your reactions. But when you go quiet, truly quiet, not out of fear, but from intention, you change the dynamic. And yes, people might say you've become distant, cold, arrogant. They'll accuse you of changing. But that's just the echo of a system that no longer works. Because they didn't know how to deal with the real you. They only knew how to deal with your availability. And now that it's gone, They're left with the noise of their own mind. That's what silence does. It doesn't destroy. It reveals. It holds a mirror. And in that mirror, people are forced to see everything they've tried to avoid. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. You chose peace over proving, stillness over reaction, yourself over the performance. This is where your power sharpens, when you realize that every word, every message, every explanation is an investment of energy. And not everyone deserves access to your truth, because truth is sacred. And sometimes the strongest truth is the one left unspoken. But to stay silent in this way, to choose stillness when chaos calls your name, requires more than self-control. It requires emotional discipline, a sacred kind of unavailability. And that's what we'll explore next. Not just what silence removes, but what it protects. Let's talk about why you don't owe your energy to anyone. You've been conditioned to feel guilty for pulling back, for saying no, for not replying right away, for protecting your energy. But here's the truth. No one teaches you. You don't owe your energy to anyone. Not your time, not your attention, not your emotional labor, not your explanation. Just because someone asks doesn't mean you have to give. Just because someone is loud doesn't mean they're right. And just because you're capable of holding space doesn't mean you're obligated to. You've been taught that being available makes you kind. But kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's self-abandonment. The more you give without discernment, the more others expect without gratitude. And before you know it, you're giving out of fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of seeming rude. Fear of being left behind. So you stay available. You over-explain. You soften your voice. You say yes when every cell in your body screams no. But for what? Approval that vanishes the moment you stop performing? Connection that's only sustained by your emotional sacrifice? You owe yourself better, because your energy is sacred. It's not infinite. It's not replaceable. And it's not for sale. So you have to start choosing consciously, ruthlessly, unapologetically, not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of deep self-respect. That means not responding to the message that disrupts your peace, not picking up the call that comes with an agenda, not forcing yourself to engage in conversations that leave you emptier than before, and most of all, not explaining why. That's the part most people struggle with. The silence after the boundary. The space where you don't justify, don't soften, don't perform damage control. You just let the line hold. That silence, it's powerful. Because when you stop explaining your boundaries, you stop giving people the opportunity to negotiate with them. You say no, and that's it. And yes, people will fall away. People who are used to your constant yes. People who relied on your guilt to keep you available. Let them fall. Let the false layers peel off. Let the noise fade. Because what remains after that is real, quiet, strong, unshakable. But here's the thing. This kind of sovereignty often comes with isolation. Not forever, but long enough for you to hear your own voice again. Let's talk about that next. Let's talk about the sacred space where true transformation begins. The inner solitude of the self. At some point, the silence you've chosen becomes more than a boundary. It becomes a sanctuary. What began as a withdrawal from noise, from guilt, from the constant need to explain, becomes something deeper. A space, a stillness, a sacred kind of isolation. Not loneliness, not depression, not exile, something else. It's the space where the self begins to speak for the first time, maybe in years. Carl Jung called it individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are beneath all the masks. But to hear your own voice, you have to step away from the chorus of everyone else's, and that means silence, distance, unavailability. Not because you're running from the world, but because you're returning to yourself. This isolation isn't punishment, it's purification. Because in that quiet, you begin to see it all clearly. The roles you've played, the people you clung to out of fear, the pieces of yourself you gave away to feel loved. And slowly, gently, you begin to reclaim them. Not all at once, not dramatically, just one quiet, conscious choice at a time. You stop reaching for connection just to fill the silence. You stop begging for closure that will never come. You stop trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. And in that space, you start remembering who you are. Without the mask, without the noise, without the need to be anything for anyone. But this isolation, it's not easy. It's uncomfortable. It's unfamiliar. You'll be tempted to go back, to explain, to be nice, to smooth things over. Don't stay in the stillness. Let it do its work, because this is where real transformation happens. Not in the chaos, not in the drama, but in the quiet space where no one else is speaking. And for once, you finally are. It's in this sacred isolation that strength is forged, where clarity blooms, where peace finds a home. And when you emerge from it, you're no longer reactive. You're no longer drained. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. But something else begins to happen here, something few people talk about. When you start standing fully in your own presence, you become different. People feel it. You say less but, it carries more. You give less but, it means more. You become reserved, and suddenly, you're respected. Let's talk about what that kind of presence looks like. Let's talk about the solitude of the strong. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins to happen. At first, it feels like loss. You feel the distance, the quiet. You wonder if you made a mistake, if the silence means you're alone. But slowly, that silence starts to change. It softens. It settles. It begins to feel like something else entirely. Not absence, but presence, your own. This is the solitude of the strong. It's not bitter. It's not lonely. It's powerful. Because for the first time, you're not performing. You're not reacting. You're not explaining your worth. You're just being whole, grounded, untouchable. This kind of solitude doesn't come from closing the door on the world. It comes from opening the door to yourself and realizing you are always enough. You no longer need others to reflect your value. You no longer chase conversations that lead nowhere. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you understand yourself. And that self doesn't need to be defended. You carry yourself differently. You enter spaces without needing to prove anything. You speak less, but people listen more. Because your energy says what your words no longer have to. This is what happens when you stop betraying yourself to be accepted. You stop needing everyone, and you start attracting those who respect your silence. Because the truth is, your absence teaches louder than your presence ever could. People will notice. Some will admire it. Others will resent it. But either way, they'll feel it. Because strength isn't loud. It's not forceful. It's not reactive. It's the steady refusal to be pulled out of your peace. But here's the part no one tells you. When you become this grounded, this selective, this whole, you also become rare. And what is rare is often misunderstood. You'll be called distant, selfish, too much, too little, by people who only knew how to love the version of you that was always available. Let them speak. Let them fall away. Because you didn't come here to be understood. You came here to be true. And the truest version of you doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't prove. It chooses. It protects. It honors. And with that, a new kind of life begins to emerge. Not one built on emotional scraps or reactive living, but one rooted in peace. And that peace? It only welcomes what aligns with it. Let's close this journey by talking about what happens after the silence, after the withdrawal, after the distance. Let's talk about a life beyond emotional crumbs where you don't just protect your peace, you build everything around it. When you stop being available to everyone, you don't become cold, you become clear. At first, it feels like everything is falling apart. You lose people. You leave conversations mid-sentence. You walk away from spaces you used to shrink yourself to fit into. And it hurts. Because silence is not just quiet, it's cleansing. But after the ache fades, something else begins. Peace. The kind of peace that doesn't beg, that doesn't need permission, that doesn't trade authenticity for approval. It's quiet, yes, but it's not empty. It's full of truth, of strength, of self. You no longer accept emotional crumbs just to feel loved. You no longer lower your standards just to feel included. You no longer keep relationships alive out of guilt or habit. Instead, you start building a life where everything aligns, where your time is honored, where your energy is respected, where your silence is understood. Not by many, but by the right ones. And what a difference that makes. You stop explaining yourself. You stop overextending. You stop trying to be everything for everyone. Because you finally realize being loved means nothing if you have to abandon yourself to get it. Carl Jung wrote that the process of individuation, the journey of becoming whole, requires separation from the collective. Not to reject the world, but to remember who you are beneath it. That's what this journey has been. Not an escape, but a return. Not the loss of connection, but the birth of real connection, starting with the one you have with yourself. So yes, people will misunderstand you. They'll question you. They might even resent the version of you that no longer plays the part. Let them. You're not here to be easy to digest. You're here to be true. And truth, when spoken through action, through silence, through boundaries, through sovereignty, doesn't need to shout. It simply is. Now, the people who remain in your life, they're not there for your availability. They're there for your presence, your essence, your wholeness. And that wholeness is rare. So let yourself be rare. Let yourself be unavailable to what drains you and open only to what feeds you. Because that's the new standard now. No more over-explaining. No more apologizing for your peace. No more emotional handouts. Just stillness, truth, power. If you've made it this far, something in you already knows. You're ready. Ready to be misunderstood. Ready to be alone for a while, if that's what it takes. Ready to rebuild from the inside out. Because the world doesn't need more people who are liked. It needs more people who are real. So if you're done living for crumbs, if you're ready to choose peace over validation, then let this be your turning point. No more reacting. No more leaking energy. No more proving. Just presence and power and peace. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. If this message spoke to you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel seen, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to the channel, not just for more content, but to stay connected to ideas that honor your growth, your energy, and your inner truth. Your presence here matters, and your journey toward peace is just beginning.